keep us in that.
And this is part 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to part 3 of this week's YAWA. I'm Kat the dog trainer.
I'm the guy with the big gun.
And if you've missed parts 1 and part 2, go ahead and check out our YAWA playlist and subscribe to our channel so you don't
Stop watching now. Go back. Watch part 1, part 2. They have to be watched in order.
Not really, but you can still go back and watch them and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss part 4. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. Getting started, answering your questions from Cody Bidwell on Facebook.
Okay. Hey, Cody, thanks for the question.
My 1-year-old GSP Lincoln is collar conditioned to recall, stay, sit, and heel.
Nice.
We have introduced him to birds and gunfire, and he's mentally mature enough to handle it all. Unfortunately, I fell short on developing his natural retrieve. 110% my fault, but we're going to work through trained retrieve together. My question is, should I try to develop his natural retrieve before starting the trained retrieve? I would say if you've already been playing retrieving games and things like that and you're not seeing a real natural retrieve and that's why you're saying, I'm probably going to have to do this trained retrieve, and you're already at a year old, it's going to be more difficult to bring out a natural retrieve when your puppy has been so conditioned for the last year that, I don't really retrieve. Sure, there's still things that you can try, still things that you can do, especially not knowing what you have tried. We kind of have our bag of tricks that we like to pull things out of once in a while and trying to bring out that natural retrieve. But ultimately, that's stuff that we try and do with younger dogs that can start developing that. And a lot of times we still end up at a year and a half going through the trained retrieve process, especially with all of our own personal dogs. We go through that trained retrieve process.
Even when they're good retrievers.
Yeah, definitely. Even when they're great retrievers, it's part of our testing protocol that when we get to the point where we're doing advanced testing and handling, and I need the dog to retrieve everything to hand, if they drop it, I need to be able to tell them, fetch, and they know what it means, pick it up and hold it. So we do, even with great retrievers, great natural retrievers, go through that process. But if you're thinking that your puppy doesn't have a lot of, year-old dog doesn't have a lot of retrieving desire naturally, and you've tried a few things to bring that out, it's probably time for thinking about the trained retrieve. But if you still would like a little bit more of an evaluation, you can always reach out to us on Patreon, where we can talk to you about a few of those tips and tricks that we would recommend to try and bring out a natural retrieve, and you can video those sessions so we can see how it's going and give you an evaluation of, yeah, you might get there, or, this looks like a little bit of a lost cause, and let's go ahead and cut our losses and start that trained retrieve and stop building sloppy, naughty habits.
And then as you go through that process, we're happy to help. That's probably one of the largest learning curves in the dog training, especially bird dog training world, if you will. And we're there to help. So that's patreon.com/Standing Stone Kennels. What do we got next?
Next question, also on Facebook from Katie Garib. I adopted a 1.5-year-old GSP 2 weeks ago. He's sweet and for the most part well-behaved. He doesn't have any training, however, so I've been starting from scratch. Thing is, he doesn't seem to have some of the natural traits of GSPs. No love of water or retrieving, only sporadic treat interest, and a little on the fearful side. He will point the birds in the yard, though, so I have hope. Any tips for bringing him out of his shell and helping him become bold and confident? So, Katie, I don't necessarily know the background of your 1.5-year-old GSP that you adopted or rescued. So not knowing the background, we can still give some generic, typically helpful pointers. Haha, no pun intended.
You intended that pun.
Okay, I did. But the number one thing that I can say is be patient. It's going to take him a little bit of time to feel comfortable with you. And in order to help build that comfort, build that trust, I would say having him work for his meals is going to help that happen sooner. I know you said he's not very food or treat motivated.
She's had him for 2 weeks, right?
2 weeks.
Yeah.
But she said that he has sporadic treat interest. Now, I don't know if you're using treats or his meal for training sessions or trying to work with him that way, but I would recommend cutting out the treats if he really doesn't have a ton of interest in them and using his meals and having him work for those, even if it's just as simple as feeding him out of your hand and starting to, build that association with the clicker as a good thing. You can start that process, but making him work for his food. If he only takes a few handfuls of food and then he's done, wait for his next meal and try again. And he's going to get hungry enough that he is more willing to work for you, more willing to eat. And then he's going to understand that, hey, this person is an important person in my life and I'm going to get food from them, which is the most important thing in a dog's life, basically.
Yeah, a little bit of tough love in this situation is going to go a long way. I know that you probably feel like you're applying human characteristics to the dog, that they need love and comfort because it's a new environment and everything else. But dogs' brains work a little bit different, and you pulled these, like what Kat just said. You're gonna pull those life sustaining triggers in their brain and
survival instincts.
That's exactly what I meant. Kick in, and that's going to be drastically more powerful than a little cuddle time on the couch. It's just saying, go to this new strange place, and this is the person that feeds me. So
they are
the
important.
most important to me.
The other side of it is when we get dogs, even in for training that might be a little unsure of the situation of being here, that kind of fearful response that you're talking about, we always tell people, we're going to help your dog by first teaching them how to be a dog. And that helps them get over all of their insecurities, basically. Yep. Number one way that we do that about getting them over themselves and helping them just adjust and think about something else is using a treadmill. People look at us like we're crazy and like, well, what's a treadmill going to do to help my dog get comfortable at my new house? Or what's a treadmill going to do to help my dog become collar conditioned to recall? Well,
if your dog knows how to run on the treadmill, throw it in the comments below. We salute you.
Yes. And the reason that we like to use a treadmill is because it builds a lot of mental stability, a lot of mental focus, because they have to be able to handle that to run on a treadmill. And if they are mentally stable enough for that and they can focus and concentrate and think through that, they're going to be ready for other types of training and other higher expectations.
As well as we talked about in the previous episode, or previous part, I guess, of this episode, that a dog that's tired mentally and physically is going to be able to relax and rest and feel more comfortable. And that treadmill is going to be very mentally taxing to begin with. And I don't know, Kat and I notice this every time we go to a show. You go to an expo or an event, and you are there from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. I think that's like the Pheasant Fest.
Pheasant Fest is a big one that wears us out.
Yes, and there may be 10 to 30,000 people that walk through there, and a lot of them roll past the booth because we're usually there with DT Systems, the e-collar company that we pro staff for.
And Game Fair too.
Game Fair is another big one, but tons of people rolling through, and you're talking and you're smiling and you're interacting with all of these people
and answering questions, and
mentally taxing.
Mentally draining. I mean, by the end of the day, we aren't going out to have dinner and
go lay down, sleep,
and have a good time. We're like, put me to bed. I'm so tired. So that's a good thing that you can think about applying to your dog's situation. And like I said at the beginning of this, just be patient. 2 weeks truly in the grand scheme of things isn't that long of a time for him to be able to adjust at a 1.5 years old and not knowing his background and what he has had conditioned and had habits formed prior to that. But being patient, helping him work for his meals, I think is going to build that bond and make him be able to settle in a little bit faster. And then the things like the water love, not every dog loves water, and you can definitely introduce it properly. But if he is not comfortable with you yet, having enough trust to get in the water that he doesn't know about and isn't sure about isn't the right answer. That's something that you want to wait until he's much more comfortable with you, very bold and confident before you expect and ask that much more of him.
100%.
So great question. Next question from Stephen F. Lung on Facebook. How do you reinforce longer stays on bed like shown on Instagram while doing laundry, treats, e-collar, etc. So awesome that you're following along with our Instagram and Facebook stories. We love that people are enjoying seeing, kennel life and the such.
We have just the video for you, so hopefully you are a subscriber and have those notifications turned on. We're going to be shooting the 3, count them, 1, 2, 3 Ds of place training. Those are going to be, which one do you want to start with?
Distance,
distraction,
and duration, like
and
you were
duration.
talking about. So we're going to go into more depth in the video, but what you're talking about, how you get longer duration on those dog beds. So we need to first teach the behavior of place training. Then we can have greater expectations of being able to send them from a greater distance, have them stay on that dog bed for a longer duration, and then stay on that dog bed through greater distractions, other dogs training sessions, folding laundry, etc. And that is definitely a progression of starting with treats and then moving into collar conditioning to those behaviors for sure. So be sure to watch for that video. We'll go into a lot more detail with that. So, okay, next question. This is a good one from Cami Sorensen on Facebook. My 2-year-old GSP is very food motivated and obedient when she knows there is food and treats involved.
Oh, yeah.
However, she doesn't always listen when I don't have food for her. How do I bridge the gap? She knows what the commands mean, but chooses to ignore them without the motivation of a food reward.
You want this one or you want me to take it?
I've been hogging most of the questions this round, so I will let you answer one.
Booyah! So this is a question that we get a ton. So you're definitely not alone in this situation, but it's one of those things that's going to be easier than you might think to help overcome. So first of all, while we're still working with positive reinforcement, we do a simple thing called variable reinforcement. And when we introduce variable reinforcement, it helps to build more consistency in those situations when the dog's not actively getting food rewards. How this works and why it works, or a real world example, if you will. Gambling is a perfect example for the average person of variable reinforcement. You come in, you play the slot machine, ka-ching, 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 you win, right? Some money comes out, not a lot, a little bit. It's like a piece of dog food, right? For the dog. It's a reward, but it's not a huge reward. You play again, you play again, you play again, you win a little bit. So as long as that variable reinforcement happens often enough to keep you enticed, you keep playing. It's going to be different for every person. It's going to be different for every dog. And you have to balance that out. So in a training situation, you would be asking here, kennel, sit, doing some of the different commands, cues that your dogs know. And then from there, clicking every time to mark those behaviors and then passing out that food reward less and less often and variably. Don't get any kind of pattern. It's not every third time or every fifth time. It's you do 3 things in a row, you get a reward. You do 1 thing, you get a reward. You do 5 things, you get a reward. So it's always keeping them guessing. And as long as you don't cross that threshold into the level of they no longer have interest, you're going to build progress with this. Now, if you continue to struggle and your dog hasn't figured out that your treat pouch is the only way, or the bowl of food on the counter or whatever it may be is the only way they're getting rewarded, you need to move to more regular or more generalized training and feeding. What we would recommend to do with that is to take your dog's entire meal for the day, put it in a bowl, and utilize that throughout the entire time that they are out and around you for training. So all day long, they're working for that food. That's going to put a ton of focus on you and obedience and doing the things that they're supposed to, even to the point where it might become annoying. It's like, okay, now she's sitting in front of me. Now she went to her bed. Now she's coming over and she's trying to get my attention because she's ready to eat. And when you get that level of focus, you can really start to build good behaviors through all stages of the day and when you're outside and every environment that you're around. Now, that again is still not a perfect situation. It's great for teaching until that food reward is not a powerful enough thing to keep the dog's attention. Then we move to using negative reinforcement or e-collars to build a more consistent understanding in those higher distraction situations. So, anything to add?
I think you about covered it. If you have more questions, definitely let us know. You can check out, we did do a video recently on operant conditioning, which talks in
all 4 quadrants.
In general about all 4 quadrants so that you can have a better understanding of going from that positive reinforcement to negative reinforcement and understanding how that works. So
great question. Great question.
I think the last question that we're going to be able to get to for part 3 is from...
Whoa. Aren't we in part 4?
No.
Okay. Part 3.
I don't know. What part are we in? Put it in the comments below if you know. Okay. So from Mrs. Stephanie Stout. Sorry. I am bad at these when they all blur together. This is on Instagram. Once you get a puppy, how long do you wait before you start training? Does the puppy need time to get comfortable in their new home with their new family before you start working on things? We recommend starting training your puppy from day 1.
I'm going to see how many colors you got.
Oh, he's checking my work. So we recommend starting training with your puppy from day 1. If you have a very well socialized, bold, confident puppy, your breeder's done all the groundwork for you, you can get them home and you can immediately start all of the training by charging the clicker. In every puppy training series we have on our YouTube channel, that's the first step, charge the clicker. So you can start that process by using their meal and food for that charging process. And then also keep in mind that everything that is new for your new puppy is all things that you want to also evaluate and say, okay, I need to set the ground rules. And that is considered training as well. So if you don't want your puppy pottying on the floor, for example, you need to potty train them. And that's not necessarily formal training, but it is monitoring when they get access to water, monitoring how long they've been out, watching them, don't leaving them unattended, and showing them where they need to go to indicate that they do need to go out. So all of that training begins at day 1. Develop the puppy that you want now so that they're an enjoyable adult to have as part of the family.
Beautifully said.
Day 1.
And I can't count worth a darn. We are just finishing up part 3.
I was right.
Always.
Thank you all for watching part 3 of this week's YAWA. We will be back with part 4 very shortly, and it will be part 4. I will make sure that he remembers that.
Thanks, guys.